Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew White. I'm the salesman part of the title. Each week, I sit down with CEOs and entrepreneurs to discuss and dissect their journeys, filled with triumphs, challenges, and some good old-fashioned business wisdom. Get ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired as we dig into leadership, strategy, sales, marketing, and everything in between. This is the CEO and the Salesman podcast. Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast, where we interview Australia's leading CEOs and talk about what it's really like growing a technology business. Today, we're joined by Matt Wilcox, the CEO of Fifth Domain. G'day, Matt. How are you going?
Yeah, hi Matthew. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks you. Thanks for the opportunity to be on this podcast.
Mate, let's just dive into it, mate. But what I was really interested in our conversation is that a lot of people come into cybersecurity, sort of after a few different careers. You sort of just jump straight into it. Do you want to talk about, you're probably an OG, I guess you could call yourself, of the cyber world. And you were talking earlier how you were in the Signals Directorate. So what was it like working for the government back in the day in cybersecurity?
To be honest, actually could be considered as a bit of a late starter in
Really?
cyber or cybersecurity or technology. So I actually did my first undergraduate degree in film and television. So I went in that and did that when I was quite young, and then sort of went, well, it's going to be hard to make a career out of this. But I was also had an interest in security and intelligence at the time. So then went and did a master's of. Back then it was called information security. The word cyber didn't exist. This is back in 2006, right? So
right,
did that, and then got into a graduate program within the Department of Defence and working at Defence Signals Directorate. And so really when I joined, it was still called information security. And then around probably about 2010, the word cyber started to emerge as this new thing, which I guess captured the imagination of really the world. So moving forward, did that for a number of years, and was really doing some training as well within the Defence Signals Directorate, and at the same time also was joined the Army Reserve. So I went through the Army Reserve's officer training, and started to really start to bring together a sort of overlap of military planning, conventional planning within the Army, and then sort of the cyber operations domain, that I was working in. And funnily enough, the word fifth domain is really about, the fifth domain of warfare after land, sea, air, space, cyber. So it's the fifth domain. And really it is a domain, and you can start to incorporate, a lot of this, military planning concepts into, this digital terrain. And so when I left the Defence Signals Directorate, I did consulting for a little while back into the community. But then I started to teach at ADFA, UNSW ADFA. And I
noticed them. That in the resume.
Yeah, and they just started, I approached them and said, oh, look, I'm losing some of my technical skills. Is there, tutoring opportunities or something like this? And they actually offered me to write courses for the Masters of Cybersecurity program. Wow. So I went about that and actually developed, foundational courses in offensive cyber operations and defensive cyber operations, really bringing in a lot of the military thinking around how do you plan, how do you analyze digital terrain like you would analyze physical terrain. How do you then break down tasks? How do you then analyze risk and etc. And so what I started to do then is realize that, hey, I started to see within industry there was at that time, this is probably back in 2014, 2015, there was a lot of security training out there, but it was very much tools training. Use this tool, how to use this firewall, etc. like this. There was no real training. Well, there was some providers out there that would do this, but there was no real training around how to think like an operator, like a soldier of cyber, so to speak. Because it is very much a combat domain, and there's constantly adversaries, etc.
You said the other day, I thought that was a really nice way of putting it, is about combat, because I remember going into and looking at asking my technical people, were there any, are we ever attacked, or are we just a small business and we don't really come up or count, and we don't really feature on anybody's radar, so to speak? And he goes, my head of technology went, are you kidding me? Look at this. We're right now being attacked. There's thousands of hits on our server. So it just seems like a constant, as you put it, combat.
Yeah, 100%. And look, the whole industry of cybersecurity exists because there is, adversaries, right? There's cyber criminals, there's other nations, there's etc. And they're trying to use technology to circumvent, systems to, steal something from you, or, to manipulate a system to achieve something that's beneficial to them. So there's a lot of, were a lot of, training out there that really forgot that. It was, focused on how to use and be a system administrator for technologies, and really thinking about what I'm actually trying to do here is, defend against an adversary trying to, break into my systems and undermine, what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, very cool. Well, just switching tact here, because you're running a pretty successful business now. What thoughts or what concepts have you taken from your time working in the military have you brought over into your existing business?
I think,
if any.
look, I think, so to be clear, like I spent all of probably about 5 minutes in the army, relatively to some people's careers. I did my training, and I did, a couple of years of actually working in as a reservist. But, the military is very good at breaking down complexity into an action plan. And I think that's probably, what I take most from it. Ability there's a whole process, a system around how do you analyze different aspects of, a theater, to be able to then break it down and build out a plan and then execute on that plan. So that's probably the key one thing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so, what lessons so when you're working with your team, are there particular leadership ideas that you seem to be referencing yourself from those days, or have what have been your major influences when it comes to leadership?
Well, definitely, I think I remember having this debate we had a debate when I was doing my army training. Was are leaders made or born? And I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think you have to have, a natural personality to, be very goal oriented, be very outcome oriented. And I guess it really becomes, there are different leadership styles. I think that's what, people need to understand. But, thinking about leadership, I always think about, you're only a leader if people follow you. Okay. Otherwise you're just out on a walk by yourself. So whatever you've got to do to get people to, follow you, to inspire you, and that could be different for different cultures or age groups or different industries and et cetera like that. But it's really, if you want to break it down to it, it's about people following you somewhere.
Okay. And so when it comes to your style, what's your style? What works for you?
Yeah, I think it's two things. It's about communication and clarity, and then honesty. So, being very clear around, and, a leader doesn't have all the information all the time. And, I don't, and there's a lot of ambiguity, in some things that, we set out to achieve and etc. And so, probably my style is, probably very directive in terms of this is what we want to achieve. This is what success looks like. This is when we need it to happen. This is why, and etc. like that. And then really pushing it back onto the team to then understand, okay, well, you are, in a way, giving the team, in a way, enough sort of, potentially, rope to hang themselves, but, be very, very close to them at the same time to say, hey, if you need support, come back and let's talk about it. So it's a constant balance between, putting them in the, keeping them in the deep end, but then also making sure that you're there to, help them out if need be. So it's a constant, I think, for me, of how much do you lean in and how much do you, come back and step back as well. And, it's, we've both got kids, and, growing up, that's the constant thing as well. How much do you, help them achieve something, or how much do you let them just, trip over and learn for themselves of how to pick themselves back up. But in a way, sort of always them knowing that they're always sort of there. You're there as a parent to sort of, help them and so forth, if need be. But that's very much my style, about having clear expectations, and then, providing support, but also then giving them space to then learn and make their own mistakes.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. So, is there been any situation or an example you can give us where you've been able to really inspire the team, or there's been a situation where you haven't inspired them, or you've uninspired them?
Yeah, I think probably, so first of all, not inspire them, so, you, as a CEO, and, and as a business owner, as there's a lot of really boring, important stuff that you got to think about.
Yep.
And sure, it makes sense to you, and it's important to you, and you might come up with a revelation. Oh, that's what we need to do, but it's just really boring and uninspiring to the rest of your team. And sometimes I've just communicated that they've just gone, "Yep, so what? Like that's not important for us in a way,
Yeah,
right?"
right. Yeah.
And so you've got to, in a way, you've got to be, So I've fallen over just doing that sometimes. When on the other side, what's inspired? I think, to be honest, it's been very much around how do you link what the people are doing to the bigger picture, right? And showing them how what they're doing today, matters for, the customers, or, society. And then how does that link it to really, this point in time and history? Because everyone, especially Fifth Domain, we have a lot of people who are early in their careers. It's a strategy in what we do. We bring people in early, bright, hungry, enthusiastic people, and we very much start to, give them more responsibility. Probably, what I talked about just before, throwing them in the deep end, but making sure that we're there to support them. And so this demographic, you could say, are very interested in, their society, and, the purpose and the bigger picture of sort of what we're trying to achieve.
Oh, okay. So you reckon that, I've got younger kids, but they're not really in the workforce yet. Oh, well, they work at Macca's, but, that's not really the work. Well, it's sort of the workforce. So you find a difference in working styles and attitudes with the younger people? Like that's something you've really noticed? Has it become noticeable for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, definitely. So, I've had, some, more experienced people, come in and work for this. I've, hired in, some experience, and you do get a degree of, support, and expertise, and they bring a lot of lessons learned. But sometimes if you're doing something a little bit different and innovative in technology, there's a lot of old habits that might not be, relevant or, important to sort of what you're doing in the business. As where the younger people, the trade-off is, yep, they're full of enthusiasm, they're bright, intelligent, and they're able to learn, and you're able to shape them. But you realize then, hey, you do need to shape them. They don't have the experience to draw upon to apply to the current situation. And so really, you've got to be, and sort of teach, it works with me as my style, because I come from that education and sort of training background.
Yeah, okay.
Where I can give them, the mentoring and the support, which isn't too directive, but more of a coaching style approach to growing them. And that's our approach here to at Fifth Domain.
Yeah, got it. I worked in an organization, and they generally hired very, very young people. And when I first started contract, and I was, other than the owners, one of the oldest people there, and it's a tough pill to swallow. But and what I found is, and I started off going, oh well, they don't know anything, and I thought that it was a negative. And then over time, I became more and more inspired by the fact that they didn't know anything, the fact that they went, oh well, and they were really, really bright people. They were exceptionally bright young people, and so they really got me excited about when I went into started recruiting for my own business again, that I actually started to lean younger, because I started my first tech company when I was 22. So I had no choice but to hire everybody who was older than me. It's weird as a 22-year-old hiring, literally I was hiring 60-year-olds
Yep.
in various roles. And now, and over time, when I had some time off and did some consulting for a while, now I'm growing another business. It's very exciting to work with people who have got that level of enthusiasm. They don't know. I probably haven't been beaten down by the world yet. So yeah, it's really it's really interesting how connected these people are, and there seems to be a lot of, I wouldn't say on on various social media that there's an attitude of clock in and clock out, or quiet quitting, or whatever the latest buzzword is, to try to create some sort of generational divide. But I'm not seeing that. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing the stuff the media wants us to understand or think that about a particular generation and reality?
Yeah, I think it's, not to, dehumanize it, but people are a system, right? And people respond to different inputs and outputs. So, what's important to, my generation, I'm a Generation Xer, is
Yep.
very different to, what the inputs and outputs are of, other generations. I'm not a social scientist, so I can't, theorize around why that is.
Yep.
But essentially, coming back to it, it is about understanding, what motivates people, what,
Mm.
makes people tick, and then giving them those inputs to then inspire them and sort of, and do that. I think there is, especially in technology, in the space that, Fifth Domain is in, you have to constantly question, your assumptions and so forth. And really, the younger people that I work with here at Fifth Domain, they're quite comfortable in challenging ideas and etc. Which is great. Which you have to, that's what it's about. You're one way to, fail in a startup is to be overconfident in your ideas, right? Because you have limited perception of what, of a perspective of what the customer wants and etc. like this, and you need to constantly be challenged on that. Now, what I find is that, working with younger people is, they're more forward in, wanting to, give feedback and etc. like this. But then once you take that on and then provide that back to them and explain, well, actually, no, this is why it's a bit different, etc. like that, they're actually easier to mold. And they're not trying to defend a reputation or,
Yeah. Okay.
an assumption or a belief in their own knowledge set, which they have to be right in. They're very fresh and
Mm.
green and, much more, I guess, malleable in that. And so, so that's why we really like, and it's a really type, we've learned a lot of hard lessons over the years about who succeeds in Fifth Domain, and, and who does not. And so, we constantly talk about, it's written into sort of our approaches is that we, very high for potential and we grow, as part of one of our, our workforce or our HR principles.
Yeah, right. Okay. So speaking of, so just carrying on with that. So in relation to culture and vision and mission and values, do you spend much time thinking and talking about those types of things?
Yeah, we do. Like we're not a big company. We're only, 20 staff big, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very close, and, we communicate a lot of that just through conversations, informal conversations and etc. We do talk about it, we communicate it with the town halls and etc. But it's, we have, what motivates me, I guess, we are, around cybersecurity and we're around
Mm.
national security, and we're looking for, through our technologies, be able to help people grow skills and enter the workforce to then go and protect and defend, organizations, in Australia and around the world. So that's very much that sort of, mission focus and purpose focus around that.
Right.
Now that's great. That resonates with some people. But what we also are is a tech innovation company, right? We are, we're pushing the boundaries of, what technology does, software does, even now, AI does, etc. like this, our analytics and what that means and how that shapes people's behaviors. So some people that come into Fifth Domain are very motivated by that. The mission and the purpose, the higher purpose is not, may not be for them, but the fact that they can come in here and really contribute and push the boundaries of technologies is a motivator for them. So the purpose of what we do can be different for different people. And I guess, that's what, the employee value proposition can be, right? It can be,
Yeah, got it.
purpose driven. It can be, career progression as well. And something, that's very important to, generation, because at Fifth Domain, we have technologies that basically helps, young people build cyber careers. Yeah. And a big part of that is be able to set pathways, structured pathways, and give them, activities and milestones and learning milestones for them to go on that. It's very similar, here within Fifth Domain, we have to be, very structured in the way that we, provide people options and say, yep, you're going to come in here, but there's a growth opportunity towards this type of role and these types of responsibilities, in, 12, 18 months and etc. And that's a motivator, right? And so we can get, what we want from people to build the business. But
Yep.
it's a different input than, just that, national security type of purpose.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Do you, so you talked about 18 months to 2 years, and that level of horizon. Do you think that AI is going to, and probably a bit of an easy, obvious question, but I want to get some insight here. What impact will AI have over the course of in the short term, in relation to cybersecurity? Is that actually is AI causing already issues?
Issues? I don't know. I don't think AI is fully integrated yet into cybersecurity. There's a lot of the full vision of the dream of AI is within cybersecurity is just autonomous detection, response, configuration, etc. like this, right? Where basically you've got a person in the middle and they're just making sure that the AI is not breaking any of its boundaries and etc. like that.
Right. Yeah.
Coming back to currently within the cyber domain, there's a category of technology called SOAR, right? So it's a security orchestration and automated response. So SOAR. That's been around for I don't know, almost 10 years. Now the whole impetus behind that is that it would take data inputs and then through scripts would then generate automated response to then turn things off, send alerts, and etc. like that. There's hasn't really been fully adopted by the industry because they're afraid of what that automated response will do. It may, I've done some work in the health sector. They're very sensitive to people being logged out, or locked out of machinery or data not being available or things like this. So there's a lot of unintended consequences that can happen through automated response and not having that level of context before you turn something off and etc. Right? That's then you take that into AI. It's still the same sensitivities. Yeah.
Right.
So they're concerned about, hey, look, this is great. It's really fast. It's efficient, etc. like that. But we don't even know. We can't look at a script like in SOAR. We can see the logic and follow the script of what it's going to do. Even within AI, it's like, well, we potentially don't even know what it's going to do, what it could do. It depends on the input and etc. So I was just a couple of weeks ago in London at a responsible AI conference. And
what did you get out of that?
Well, that was very interesting. So they've just brought out the EU AI Act. So this is, the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act.
Right.
And essentially it's all around, governance and how organizations, if they're using AI to make decisions or efficiencies, there's a level of compliance that they have to have around it. So they have to have, be able to have, how are they sourcing, if they're building their own models, how are they sourcing the data? How are they tagging the data? Is the governance around that? So to make sure there's not bias or tainting that data. The models, they have very clear guardrails around the models? Is there transparency in what the AI is doing? So if you do have a decision made by the AI, can you then trace it back to understand why it made that decision? So
that's almost impossible, isn't it? Because the decision trees are not really decision trees in AI. Or is it possible now? Because I was speaking with one chap who was telling me that that part of his value that he was bringing with AI was to be able to track those decision trees, which is very unusual to be able to do that. But is that now at scale? Is that now out there in the world where you can actually track those things, or is it still a bit opaque, a bit hard to see?
Yeah, it is opaque, but this is the regulation that's starting to emerge.
Yeah, right.
And so what is actually happening is there's two things. There is a new category of products emerging around AI governance. So, you make sure that, hey, if you're doing this, you can have traceability and so forth like that.
Yep.
So there is that. And at the same time, vendors are starting to have to produce documentation on this is the logic and the flow of the AI model, so that, as a enterprise, before they buy, it's like, nowadays, before you buy a piece of software or something, there's a compliance check. Is it secure? Does it have all these things?
Sure.
Or enterprises now, because they're held, by account to regulation, they're going to have to say, we have to be able to, you have to show us schematics, or you have to show us logic flows on how the AI makes decisions around these things. So there's two parts. This regulation is compelling some changes within the industry.
So does that mean there's going to be a splinters of 1,000 different people building their own AIs rather than sort of all plugging into, not that everybody plugs into OpenAI, but there'll be more structure around, or more requirement of people to build their own separate ones?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I use an analogy of, it's a bit like, cloud. So sometimes, big enterprises, they'll have, some of their stuff in the cloud. They'll have some of them on premises. It'll be some bespoke applications. It'll be some off-the-shelf applications. It'll be some cloud services, right? So it's going to be a similar approach to, AI. AI will just be another thing that's running. And so there might be some heavy lifting that's done up front with the training on the cloud, but then they'll bring those models in-house because they don't want to expose those data sets. And they'll just do, have a few models that are running on that data. And then that output may go back out to the cloud for, an open AI or something like this, or whatever hyperscaler AI there is there. So coming up with the strategies of, where do we put what load where, is still being decided. Things are so new. There were, global IT consulting companies talking at this conference, and they still don't know. It's so early days.
Yeah, mate. I mean, we're both Gen X, so we've both been around for a number of internet booms and cycles. And I started my first tech business when I was 22, and back then in 1999, software was magical. And somebody could make a computer, give them information or stock prices or whatever it might be. It just seemed this magic, and you could charge a lot of money for that magic. So this is what's now the evolution. We've gone through the number of cycles, and now people are charging a lot of money for the magic of AI. But when the dust settles, we realize who's actually got a functioning, profitable business, and that's actually not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And like it costs. So, these big hyperscalers, that run these AI platforms, like it costs more to, run our queries than we pay them, So it costs, one of Google's models costs $100 million in infrastructure to train, right? So
is that Gemini?
Yeah, I think one of them, or yeah. So, and even, every time that you press enter on, ChatGPT, that's 10 cents of electricity. So there's all of these, they're not making back their money yet, but there is such a mad rush. It's the Wild West. It's a land grab to get users and data and input, to then get profitable later.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, every new technology, it's not necessarily about making money. Remember, back in the day, it was, we'll give it away. We won't make money on the sale, but we make it up in volume, like that old chestnut. But really what they were doing is, and when you step back from it and you step away from the attempted comedy of that, you realize actually it's client acquisition and eyeballs and attention.
Mm.
And it all goes back to how many people have you got in your database, or how many people who have put some energy and effort into your machine that now creates that maybe the sunk cost fallacy, or at least some attachment to the technology, where as the business evolves and as the billing changes, you can continue to find ways of making money. Sort of like Amazon, right? They don't make any money out of their, their core business. Used to be books, now it's just products. But really, they make a lot of their money out of the idea of, web services.
Yeah.
And that's the takeaway. That's the takeoff thing. But everybody used to doing something with Amazon, and they turn around and now they're doing something almost tangential, which is web services, right?
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
it's big business for them.
Yeah, it is. That's right. So I know we've got to wrap up in a minute. You're a super busy guy, and I really appreciate your time today. What are the 2 or 3 things that people should be thinking about when thinking about cybersecurity, thinking about how they approach the internet today and going forward?
Yeah, look, it's a big question, right? Probably if I narrow the focus a little bit down to what we focus on, within Fifth Domain. So we're purely focused on security operations. So these are the people sitting in the security operations centers doing the tappy taps on the keyboard, looking at adversaries and etc. And so I've seen people come into it, and we focus on workforce. So there's a lot of hype around. Everyone wants to get into cybersecurity. Everyone wants to be an operator because there's great money in it and it's exciting. We've all seen the movies and etc. like this. So so one of the key things to think about, and probably from a let's say a chief information security officer perspective, is look for the quality, not the quantity, I guess, of the people when you build that out. And the reason being is that we talked about automation and AI a little bit earlier. It's a long way before that's ever going to happen, and that takeover. A lot of the job of a cyber person is communication and consultation, right? So as working in security operations centers, you're never actually the controller of the systems that you're protecting. Yep. You have to then interface with, those system administrators and the system owners. And you have to tell them why they can't do something or why they should do something. So, really, there's not going to be a degree of automation. If they're not going to listen to an AI or a person, they're going to listen to an AI or et cetera like this. So people are still going to be, a key capability driver within security operations. And, the great thing about the human brain is its ability to bring in context and draw context in between different data points and etc. So, for the foreseeable future, the most intelligent, machine within security operations is still going to be the human brain, right? So that's a big part of it. And so, organizations need to be able to invest in, bringing in the right people, and then grow those people over time as well. The other key considering fact is that as AI starts to integrate more into these organizations, the AI will be learning from your security operators. They are always going to mimic. They're going to look at the keystrokes, their responses, their decisions in what they're doing. So when you bring these, operators in, you've got to think about, well, they are potentially trainers or mentors of either the next generation of people, but the next generation of AI that we're starting to bring into, the organization here. So think about it is in that way. It's not just about quantity; it's more about quality.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's a lesson that can carry across every walk of life. So it's not necessarily about the biggest; it's the most effective. Look, Matt, really appreciate your time. Thanks very much for taking the time today. If anybody wants to find out more about Fifth Domain, sorry, almost got that wrong. I did. You can obviously talk to Matt. And thanks, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye for now.
Cool. Thanks, Matthew.